Of the Coeur d'Alene Parks and Recreation Commission. Melissa, will you get us started with the roll call, please?
Commissioner Cranston,
Here.
Commissioner McDowell,
Here.
Commissioner Lean,
Here.
Commissioner Tate, Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Tenbrink.
Here.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Mike, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly
Ask
will.
everybody to stand.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do any of the commissioners tonight have a conflict of interest with any of the agenda items?
None here.
Okay, there are none. Next, then, would be the approval of the July 19th, 2021 meeting minutes. Has everybody read them? Is there any revisions or corrections needed?
I move for their approval as presented.
Okay,
Second. You beat me.
Did I?
Got the second.
the motion's been made by Commissioner McDowell and seconded by Commissioner Wood to approve the July 19th, 2021 meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those minutes are approved unanimously. So that brings us to staff report, Bill.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let's see, park stuff. This is kind of a nice thing. We got some kudos from the Coeur d'Alene Garden Club. They had their annual tour, and they gave us some recognition, and the Tubbs Foundation and the fire department. So they had this, walk-around brochure that they went ahead and thanked us and Tubbs Foundation and Parks Department, Fire Department, efforts in maintaining the beauty and the safety of the hill. Tubbs has recognized the jewel in the CDA crown. It provides yet another site to recreate and enjoy beautiful areas of our renowned outdoors. Tubbs members maintain a safe and clean site, pick up trash, they help out that. Just keep it, and then let me say this, with the tutelage of Dave Yaden, and they have been really helping out the parks, as you saw with that ambassador program. It's been, really nice to have them stepping up and really doing a bunch more than what has been able to be done in the past. So, kudos to Dave and Dave's show that were here last time. But anyway, it was nice that Bonnie Warwick dropped this off, and she gave one to us and one to the fire department and one to Tubbs. Our park at 17th and Sherman is, I think by tomorrow, we'll have hydroseed going down. Trees are in. I met with our staff last week, had a little more grading to do. They brought in some more dirt. And the other, so that, I think they said tomorrow is going to hydroseed. If not, it'll be this week. So that's taking place. The one closer to 15th has already got the seed down. It's clover. If you go there now, the staff has nicknamed it the Bunny Ranch because there's a bunch of rabbits out there. Last time I drove it last week, there were 10 rabbits running around eating clover. So anyway, we've got that one up and running. And we have, this weekend, we dodged a bit of a bullet. The last several weekends in a row, we have got reports of too much vandalism. Any vandalism is too much, but the amount I've shared with council some of that, and I think I neglected to forward you the list of things that Jeff Erickson has found and had to deal with. But we didn't get that this weekend, which was refreshing. I expected to see another bad report this Monday, and not so much. So that's about all that's going on. Everybody's doing well with the lack of staff. Their attitude's very good. Our staff is remarkably resilient and ready to step to it. So and I don't have anything else to share with you at this time.
Okay. Any questions for Bill?
So are you looking into who's on vacation, Bill, in terms of vandalism that didn't happen?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Do they suspect that somebody's on vacation that maybe was involved in vandalism?
Well, maybe they got picked up.
Yeah, more likely in jail.
So,
More extended.
Oh, there was one item that I forgot to tell you about on the rec side. I apologize for that. But just a couple of updates from that division. Our fall youth soccer, we've got about 500 participants between kindergarten and 8th grade. Our youth flag football is about 100 participants from the 2nd and 3rd grade. Youth swim lessons, August, September, roughly we're seeing about 250 participants. Adult softball, roughly 300 participants, games in September through mid-October. And this coming Saturday, we have a community yard sale in this parking lot, and we've got about 20 people signed up for it. It was a brainchild, Paula, given that some folks don't have a home to be able to have a yard sale in, so folks that might have some accumulation of stuff, we're having them come to the parking lot and gonna have some vendors there, and they get some space and have an opportunity to have a yard sale. So I thought it was a pretty creative idea. We had hatched this idea last year, but COVID had better or different ideas. So we're gonna do it this year.
I'm sorry, what day was the yard sale?
Pardon me?
What was the date on the yard sale?
This weekend.
This weekend, okay.
Yeah, this Saturday.
Time frame?
Starts at 10.
We're going shopping, Bill.
Are you?
Yeah, why not? Yard sales are fun.
Bill, kind of given the outdoor conditions we've had recently with heat and smoke, have you had to cancel any recreation programs or things, or
No, we did not.
postpone them?
There were some of our, the participants themselves made that decision. I do believe they canceled, let's see, there was going to be a movie night in the park with the museum. That was canceled. I don't believe that Thursday night, Mel, help me if, did Ally ever cancel the Thursday night? I didn't think so. So it's been, user choice really is what it's been, that's what they're doing. So if people want to participate, it's there, and if not, then they don't show up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Do any of the commissioners tonight have any comments or announcements to make?
I have a comment I would like to make. Our Kiwanis Club sponsored the Taste of the Coeur d'Alenes down at the city park here a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to pass along that the park was in outstanding condition considering the amount of use it had, and we were only a couple weeks post the Ironman and the 4th of July, so I was amazed at the condition of the park. But more so, I think I was more impressed by the staff. Mike and Mark and the crew down there were just fantastic to work with. I know they're short-staffed, but they did everything they could to keep it running smooth and really helped us out. And it was a good, successful event
Thank
in
you.
large part
Yeah.
because of them.
The Mark and Mike show, they do an excellent job. They really, and in fact, I think that's one of Mike's favorite events. He always looks forward to this one. As when I was in the field, that was one of my favorites as well.
Well,
Thank you.
It worked out to be a very good event.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, I wanted to ask you, I haven't talked to council about this, but I thought I would start with you since you deal with so many events in the parks. There is a concern from many people that people are bringing their dogs to events when it's about 100 degrees out, and they're bringing them, downtown on the pavement, and park's not so bad because if it's the dog park, but have you ever had any vendors consider not allowing dogs, aside from obviously service dogs?
Well, it's interesting. Dogs aren't allowed in the parks.
Well, the parks, but they're downtown at various events.
Well, that's up to those event sponsors, I would imagine. So the Downtown Association handles the street fair. The one that we manage with Mike, as you just said, is City Park. And then, of course, Art and Green is NIC. So outside of our jurisdiction, so to speak, we don't get involved in any of that. So it would be up to, those vendors to talk to the sponsor or promoter about what the rules and restrictions are.
Yeah, it's really tough to see a dog down in that kind of heat. And I understand some people are on vacation and they have their dog with them.
Right.
It's a tough situation, but certainly a lot of people have noticed dogs in distress, so thank you, Bill.
You just take your dog down to Atlas.
Yeah, he goes
That's
to the
right.
dog park,
Yeah,
to the
that's
water
right.
park.
We tried that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody tonight want to present a public comment that isn't part of one of the agenda items tonight? Nope. Okay, this brings us to our first action item tonight. It is in regards to the Brooks Seaplane assignment of the lease agreement. The decision point tonight, should the Parks and Recreation Commission approve the assignment of the current lease for Bay 5 on the south end of City Dock with Neil and Ann Lunt doing business as Brooks Seaplane Service LLC to Shane Rogers doing business as Scenic Adventures Flights LLC. Brooks Seaplane has been leasing Bay 5 on the commercial dock and providing plane rides over our region for over 30 years and is a favorite attraction with our community and visitors alike. Shane Rogers is purchasing the business from Ann Lunt and wants to carry on this tradition. The Lunts agreed to pay a rental fee for the right of such mortgage space and the use of Bay 5 of the city dock. For the first year of the lease, the rental fee was the sum of $5,992.60, which included $5,899.20 based on a monthly rental of $491.60 and $93.40, which is 2% fee assessed by the Department of Lands, payable on April 1st, 2018 for the period of April 1st, 2018 through March 31st, 2019. Annual fee increases are based on the Consumer Price Index Western for the period of April 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2022. The rental fee was $7,193.46. This fee has been paid by Mrs. Lunt. Performance analysis. Brooks Seaplane has an existing lease in place. This lease with Neil and Ann Lunt was for 5 years, leased commencing April 1st, 2018, and ending March 31st, 2023. The leasee may request in writing a 5-year extension of this agreement for the period from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2028 by submitting to the city a written request for extension after April 1st, 2022 and prior to September 1st, 2022. The assignment of the lease is for the remaining initial term. The assignee will be entitled to request the extension. Again, the recommendation tonight would be whether to recommend to council should approve the assignment of the current with leasee Neil and Ann Lunt, DBA Brooks Seaplane Service LLC, to Shane Rogers, DBA Scenic Adventures Flights LLC. All I can say, Bill, there's a lot of
A lot of moving pieces
dollar
there.
figures and dates there in that.
So in
Staff report.
in essence, really what is taking place is the existing lease is the same. It's just that, as you see on that second page attached to the staff report, Ann Lunt is assigning the lease over to him. That was the direction that our legal department said was probably the easiest to go. I talked to Shane Rogers, and I told him that before we do the 5-year extension, that we will renegotiate that. So in 23, he'll send a letter, we'll sit down and chat a little bit more about some of these numbers. I thought it was good to get this thing up and running. I didn't want to throw it out the window and then have an assessment of fees that were much more than he was paying or what the Lunts were paying. So I just thought we'd ease into this thing a little slowly, and then we would get him in place and in operation, and we could have some discussion before the extension takes place in 23 is my hope. And I was really clear with him. And unfortunately, I don't see Shane here today. He and I chatted about it. He must have got hung up. He really can't speak to some of that. But anyway, I think I really feel historically it's a good thing to have there, just because it's been around for a very long time. Shane's a very enthusiastic guy, and I think he'll do a really good job for us. He was a little slow in getting us some information, and that's fine, but he and I chatted through that as well. And so that's the direction our legal department had us go, was rather than rewriting the agreement, starting over, it was just an assignment of the existing agreement.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, essentially, if we sent this on to council tonight and council approved it, he essentially finishes out the summer.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get any flights in. If he does, fine. I think he can fly through October or something, maybe. I don't remember exactly. So he might get, 40 days, under, maybe.
And then in 2022, we wouldn't necessarily.
He would start operation just like he normally would in the spring, and just start up next year and fly the rest of the entire season.
So, well, this is my question. I'm sure you've had some good conversations with him. I'm sure he's a good businessman. But maybe now's the time to assess if we even want to continue with that operation at Independence Point. Has there been any discussion about other opportunities at Independence Point?
Considered it, yes. I'm trying to work with two vendors, Ann Lunt and Shane Rogers. I was having some difficulty getting some information from Shane, and so I had the impression that Shane wasn't interested in flying out of there. And when he and I finally had a little sit down, he was very clear and adamant that that was his dream. And I said, I'm here to help you fulfill your dreams, but I need your help because you're not giving me the information I've been looking for. And so he was very apologetic. And I just told him, I said, one of the things that you and I need to do is develop some communication. And what had happened was his float plane was in production, and it was hung up in some parts were hung up in Canada. And all I had to do was call me and tell me that. But I wasn't getting any information, so I got the impression he didn't want to fly from there. But after speaking to him face to face, he is very excited about being there and being part of the history that's been there for, I think, 50 years now. Because before Brooks, it was somebody else.
Thank you.
Jim?
Do we have any background on his history and his expertise and
Yeah,
experience?
he sounds, he's got a flight school at the airport out in Hayden. He's got a program with junior aviators, and so he just seems, he's really plugged into the community. Yes, I think he's the real deal. It's just, in all fairness to Shane, I was, needing information. It wasn't coming forward. I think it just had to do that it was a bit overwhelmed and there was too much going on, and he just didn't get back to me as quickly as I would like to have him to, but, we got where we needed to be.
One more question. Bill, one more. Currently, he's based out at the airport.
Correct.
And I'm wondering why he couldn't just continue to be based at the airport. He'd still have access to the water, and we could look at other opportunities. Times change, things change, and maybe there's other opportunities for the city at that site. That's just my thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, my thought are we need to stay current with the assignment with the Lunts because there's been a large investment by Mr. Rogers, and we approved the Lunts agreement. And so I think we need to move forward with this agreement. And like I said, we need to look at it in '23 and sort out whether or not the price needs to change or the operation needs to change. I don't know which, but I think given the circumstances and the investment by by Mr. Rogers himself, I think it would be difficult. I would feel personally uneasy about doing that to this gentleman, honestly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Bill, per the staff report then, the rent for this season on that Bay 5 has been paid for this season.
Correct.
And so the
And came in
remaining
and paid that
term on this
himself,
lease
right.
then would be paying the fee for next season
Correct.
while you're negotiating a possible extension.
Right. Correct.
So at this point, have you received all the documents you need to proceed ahead with the assignment of the
Yes,
lease?
legal's comfortable with everything, and so they've been with me every step of the way, so yes.
And I guess the last question I have, Bill, in your discussions with Shane, parties involved, has there been any discussion regarding safety issues with kind of the busyness and traffic that you have at this end of the lake and operating your flight business?
He's expressed his concern, just like Neil did, about the water traffic. And, no one ever would have thought that air traffic was going to be an issue. And so he's certainly aware of it. And I don't know how to answer your question. I mean, everybody knows it's there, they've got to be careful, and that's that. So maybe after Shane's flown it a few times, he might have a different way of doing business. I don't know what to tell you.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I would just make a comment. I think it would be appropriate. I don't think at this point, probably not, because I think we do have an obligation with the Lunds. But given that it's one more year, I think that we ought to take this year to take a good hard look at, is that the right use? And more importantly, are we at a market rate for rates? I don't know how this lease compares to all the other rates that we have through that rest of that commercial dock there, but we ought to be reviewing them all.
Yes, understood.
Okay, any other discussion? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, Bill has convinced me, so I will make that motion. I would make a motion council should approve the assignment of the current lease with Neil and Ann Lunt, DBA Brooks Seaplane Services LLC, to Shane Rogers, DBA A Scenic Adventures Flight LLC.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion by Commissioner Wood and the second by Commissioner McDowell recommends to council that they should approve the assignment of the current lease with Neil and Ann Lunt, DBA Brooks Seaplane Service LLC, to Shane Rogers, DBA Scenic Adventure Flights LLC. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous, Bill, and I guess does this move to general services
Correct.
now next week? Okay. Okay, next item is also an action item regarding Kootenai County Waterways Memorandum of Understanding. Subject is Spokane River vessel speeds. The decision point tonight, should the city council approve amendments to the municipal code regulating motor-driven watercraft speeds on the navigable waters of the city. History. The city previously adopted speed restrictions for vessels on Lake Coeur d'Alene and that portion of the Spokane River, which was then within the city limits. On September 20th, 2016, the city annexed Blackwell Island. At the same time, the city annexed a portion of the Spokane River south of the US 95 bridge to the mouth of the river and a portion of Lake Coeur d'Alene at and surrounding the mouth of the river, approximately 158 acres in area. Under Municipal Code 4.20.020B, the current speed restrictions on the Spokane River include 1, 5 miles per hour within 100 feet of the shoreline or any dock, pier, or other structure or person. 2, 15 miles per hour within 50 feet of any other vessel. 3, 20 miles per hour at night except as otherwise restricted. And 4, 35 miles per hour in the daytime unless otherwise restricted. The code as it now reads thus allows speeds greater than were allowed by the county in that portion of the Spokane River prior to annexation. The county had designated that stretch of the river as a no-wake zone, which is defined as an area in which the operation of a vessel must be accomplished at not more than 5 miles per hour and where no water shall produce a wake greater than 4 inches in height within the designated boundaries of the area. It is undisputed that wakes generated by watercraft damage the shoreline and can negatively impact other users of the city's waters. To prevent damage to the shoreline, to make the city's speed restrictions on the Spokane River consistent with the county's prior to restrictions, which will help in enforcement, and to make the Spokane River and shorelines a safe and enjoyable recreation site for all. Staff recommends amending the city code. The new restrictions would, 1, set a maximum speed limit of 5 miles per hour or a speed which produces a wake of no more than 4 inches, whichever is less, for vessels between the mouth of the Spokane River to the south end of the University of Idaho Coeur d'Alene Harbor Center building. 2, set a maximum speed limit of 5 miles per hour or a speed which produces a wake of no more than 4 inches, whichever is less, for vessels within 100 feet of the shoreline or any dock, pier, other structure, or person. 3, prohibit operating a vessel at a speed that creates an excessive, dangerous, or damaging wake. And 4, automatically designate the Spokane River as a no-wake zone under certain circumstances. Definitions of excessive wake, no-wake zone, and wake are added closely, mirroring the county's definitions. Financial analysis. There is an existing law enforcement protection contract under which the county agrees to provide law enforcement services for the city's navigable waters of Lake Coeur d'Alene without charge to the city. The city anticipates entering into a new contract with the city, modifying the terms of the existing contract to cover that portion of the Spokane River now within the city's boundaries. Discussions with county officials lead staff to believe that the new contract will be approved by the county. Therefore, it is not anticipated that there will be a financial impact on the city except for possible incidental litigation expenses incurred in the prosecution of violators. Performance analysis. The city does not have the necessary equipment or personnel to patrol the navigable waters of the city, and it is not anticipated that it will have such equipment or personnel in the foreseeable future. The county has already been providing law enforcement services for the city's navigable waters, except for the newly annexed waters. The ordinance and the new law enforcement protection contract will simply expand the area now patrolled by the county. Again, the decision point, council should approve the amendments to the municipal code to regulate vessel speeds on that portion of the Spokane River within the city limits. With that, Bill, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I know it was a lengthy staff report, but it's fairly simple. We recently have been receiving reports about vessels entering in the waters around City Beach. Someone has, a couple times this year already, has hooked our buoys and moved them, and so there aren't buoys that says boats aren't allowed. And so, in all fairness, maybe people didn't know, but they were pulling up on City Beach, and the folks in the Fort Grant had called the Marine Division as just an example of how we need this contract. They don't have the ability right now to go in our jurisdiction. This allows them to go into our area of operations to help us with this law enforcement component, because we have a fireboat, but we don't have a way to get that out and talk to people about what the do's and don'ts of their boating behavior is. The Marine Division has that ability much better. And so it seems like it's a really easy thing for us to do and help. You know, I don't know if any of you have been out to what Mill River looks like as far as the loss of parkland we have out there with the excessive wakes. We have a brand new little park named Atlas, has got some pretty good armor on it. We hope that'll hold up pretty well. But nonetheless, it's creating havoc to our property, and that's why we got involved, because of the Atlas Park.
Bill, I know it's kind of been an expressed concern with a couple of our commissioners that aren't here tonight, but expressed the concern that they've seen and had reports of motorized boats coming in within the swim area down at City Beach and onto the beach. I guess, is there adequate language in the ordinance that the city can prohibit that motorized vessel intrusion and provide the proper signage as such?
Well, the proper signage is out there. That's what I said. The buoys state that. There's about five, starting at Hubbard all the way to the mouth of the marina, just around where Brooks Seaplane is. This season, twice now, someone has moved those. And so they've carried them off or cut the cable lines. And we've had to get a hold of the county, who's been a good partner. They help us out. They weren't available to move as quickly as we wanted to, and we had some spare buoys. So the fire boat helped us place new buoys in those locations. But there were 2 times that I heard from Ann Melbourne that buoys were missing, and certainly they were.
So it sounds like the issues you've been having is one of kind of the public education of
Right.
what is and isn't allowed and enforcement.
Right, and to answer your question, that's a no boat zone anyway. It's a swim area, and so that's that buoy designation that states that any boater should know what that designation looks like any driver knows what a stop sign looks like.
Right.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, Mr. Chair, I would just say we have had, the city has had a very long, good relationship with the county, with not only their law enforcement MOUs, but other MOUs throughout the years. And I think this is the right and responsible way to go, and I appreciate Bill putting so much work into it.
You're welcome.
And with that, I'd make a motion if
Okay.
nobody had any other.
Nope, carry on.
Okay, let me find it. I motioned the council should approve the amendments to the, this isn't for the council. So I would make a recommendation to pass this on to council to approve the amendments to the municipal code to regulate vessel speeds on that portion of the Spokane River within the city limits. Am I reading wrong?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Wood and seconded by Commissioner Lean to recommend that council should approve the amendments to the municipal code to regulate vessel speeds on that portion of the Spokane River within the city limits. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Again, I guess with that unanimous motion then, this item will also go to general services
That's correct.
next week, and that would be on Monday.
Correct.
Okay. All right, well, we're moving right along this evening, and our next item is regarding the concept for Sherman Park Square. I'm going to read a brief staff report, but I know the landscape architect and designer of the project, John Mueller, is here, which I believe is going to present a PowerPoint for us.
That's correct.
So with that said, the decision point tonight would be, should the Parks and Recreation Commission approve the concept of the Coeur d'Alene Rotary Centennial Park? The current Sherman Square Park location was home to F.W. Woolworth Building, which was burned down in 1980. The building was razed and the lot sat vacant until 1986. In 1986, Don and Bob Johnson, along with Tom Robb, approached the lot's owners, the Sheets family, and asked if they would be interested in allowing these local philanthropists to build a park at the site. The family liked the idea of the park, and Don Johnson was off and running to develop what is now known as Sherman Square Park. The Coeur d'Alene Rotary Club has been looking for a centennial project to commemorate its 100 years as a club and proposed to redevelop and upgrade the Sherman Square Park with a funding partnership with Ignite Coeur d'Alene. Under this proposal, Ignite would purchase the park from the Sheets family, and the park would be improved with funds from Ignite and the club. There is no initial cost to the city, but the city will incur irrigation and maintenance costs after the improvements have been completed and the ownership of the park is transferred to the city. There may be opportunities for partnerships to share in the management and maintenance responsibilities of this public park. The purchase price of the parcel was $525,000, $500,000 of which was provided by Ignite, with the Coeur d'Alene Rotary Club paying the remaining $25,000. In addition, the club has committed $275,000 for the improvement to the park. The intent is to have the park upgrades completed by the spring of 2022, after which it will be transferred to the city and become part of the Coeur d'Alene Parks inventory. The park is heavily used and has been enjoyed by the public for 34 years as a place to sit and relax or to enjoy the Tuesday summer concerts along with other events hosted downtown throughout the year. This also serves as a location for downtown patrons of those businesses to have a place to eat outside of the restaurants if they're too crowded. The Rotary Club hired John Mueller to create the concept. The Parks Department has reviewed the plan a couple of times and made a few changes to the design. The recommendation tonight would be whether the Parks and Recreation Commission should approve the concept of the Coeur d'Alene Rotary Centennial Park and recommend that the City Council accept the plans. Bill?
Well, with that, John made this presentation to the Rotary Club. I think that's one he's going to share with you this evening. And so, we've got Bob, right, is here from the Rotary Club as well. I've been working along with John Young, who is occupied this evening, so Bob's here, I guess, instead.
Great.
So-
Bob, would you like to come forward and just state your name for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. members of the commission. My name is Bob Burton. I know most of you, not all of you. I'm going to give you a little background on this whole idea, the whole project. This actually started a long time ago during the 2013-2014 Rotary year. Wanda Quinn was the president at the time. I was on the board. And we proposed at that time to do something special for our 100-year anniversary for the Rotary Club. The Rotary, as you know, has been very, very active in this community. We've made a lot of improvements and projects throughout the 100 years. The very first project was actually leveling the field at Memorial Field. It wasn't the grandstands, it was actually developing the land so they could play on it. They actually started that before they were even chartered. They were chartered in January 1st of 1922. And so we've had a long and extensive history since. So the idea was to do something special to honor that 100-year centennial, and we wanted to have a major project that would serve the Coeur d'Alene community and also while honoring our club's history. So that was the idea behind it. It was adopted by the board then, and then each year, from every year when a new president took office, we would set aside money to go to this project. And so each year we were setting aside $30,000. We were hoping that we'd have about $250,000 if everybody contributed, which they all did. And we invested that money. As was pointed out, we've already spent $25,000 for this project. But we also, I think, recently heard that I think we have $292,000. So it's not limited to the $255 or whatever was said there. Actually, we'd committed to $300,000 total is what we committed. But if it costs more, we're going to do what it takes within our budget. So with that, when Heidi Rogers became president, she appointed myself and Ron Oren, who you probably know, to be the co-chairs of this committee. And we started going out and meeting with the community, started getting ideas about what would be appropriate, what would be feasible, what we could do. We met with a lot of different agencies. And then 2 years ago, we made the committee larger. We have what we call the President's Council. And at that time, all the prior presidents who wanted to be on the committee could join this committee. And so we'd expand it. Jody Azevedo and myself were appointed chairman of that committee. And so we've been active, very active ever since then. We developed policies and procedures, what we wanted, what we didn't want, how it would work. And it was all adopted by the club. And then this last year, we sent out proposals, asked people to propose different projects. And then our President's Council, we had about 14 different projects that were proposed. And our council then narrowed it down to 3. And then that went before our Rotary Board of Directors, and they approved those 3. And then after we approved the 3, then we had presentations from the various representations from those 3 different projects. One of which was this pocket park, and to turn it over and to make it, improve it, and make it to also honor our club. So we had a club vote, and the club chose that. They thought that was the best one that fit our needs. And so Jody and I then started establishing committees. And we have a policies and procedures committee, which was kind of more the legal issues and developing the MOUs with the city and with Ignite and with our club. So they've been very active. We had a finance committee, obviously the ones who were in charge of the investing our money, and they'll be paying the bills, improving those as they come in. We have a marketing committee. It's going to be marketing this. It'll start up. It's already kind of started, but it's going to get more and more as time goes on as we get closer to our celebration. We have a celebration committee, which is heavily involved right now. They've already established a date in January, because that'll be our 100th year. So we've got, we're going to have a big Centennial dinner of all the Rotarian club, or our members. Invite some people from, hopefully from the International Rotary to attend. Then we're going to, and we propose then to have in the spring this project completed, and we would at that time have a big unveiling for the public. So that's what they're working on. We have a historical committee, and they've been going around and trying to learn about the past. What did Rotary do this last 100 years? And John's going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to incorporate that into the park. We're having these stones, and they're going to have different projects so people can read that, the different things that the Rotary has done for the last 100 years. The main committee was the design committee, and this was the one that was charged with designing and coming up with a plan and getting it, working with all the city agencies and everyone to come up with a plan that everybody approved. And this was a special committee. We had some really good people on this. We chose Ron Oren and John Young were the co-chairs. Jack Riggs, who was very instrumental in actually helping negotiate this purchase. Steve James, Lori Mayfield, Nancy Sue Wallace, Nick Arman. Those were all on that committee. And so they've been working very, very hard with John to come up with this design. Once they come up and they tweaked it and whatnot, and they come up to once this committee came up with their approval, they went to the board of directors. John showed them what it was. They all adopted it unanimously. So then the next board meeting of the club was, again, he came, showed it to us. Anybody had questions, whatever, and it was unanimously adopted by our club. So everybody is fully behind this. So I hope that you pass this and send it on. So I'll turn this over to John so he can, if you have questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Questions for Bob?
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
Judge,
sure.
let me ask you a question. You used to ask me questions all the time. When you worked your design team, which first of all, John Mueller is top-notch, but your design team, did you work with our city team at all? Have our city team, and we can ask Bill this, but you're right here, has our city team been involved at all?
John,
Just hit the enter key.
can you want to answer that? Because I wasn't at all their meetings, so I don't.
Okay.
It's my understanding that John Young worked with Hillary and Troy and Chris in engineering
Oh.
at various stages on various aspects of the project. And that was extended over, or back and forth was extended over about a 4 to 6 week period. And before we really got to a finished product. We had some iterations they looked at and suggestions were made, change this, adjust that, that kind of a thing. And so there has been quite a bit of interaction at staff level, and Troy could talk about that as well.
Yeah, I just
But-
see him
but,
sitting there. We will ask him too.
I think John was really the point man on those discussions and interactions, and then he would provide direction to me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Let's see here, we can take this forward. Not used to this microphone. Do I need to identify myself here? John Mueller, somewhere in northwest Coeur d'Alene. You know, as we talked about, and it was discussed in the staff report, this was the old Woolworths site. You can see in the picture. I almost said for us old timers, but I'll say long timers. We all remember what that was and how it contributed to downtown. But when we lost it with the fire, obviously it left a scar. And this is what it looked like in the middle of our downtown. You can see at the right of that photo, we're just, for the original effort, we were just starting to put soil, fill that guy up, and we'd cut holes in the bottom floor to let the water run through it. But it was quite a bit of quite an eyesore to downtown. There was also, I think, a fourth player in that group of people. Mike Patano was involved with Tom Robb and the Johnston brothers, and Mike threw a young landscape architect by the name of John Mueller at the project as a pro bono thing. And so we sort of put this thing together, and the original effort, and the National Guard hauled the material out of the fairgrounds, brought it down, filled the hole up. We got everything donated, and we got, the park. And so what's cool about this is a next generation version 30 years later, and the staff report outlines that. And the only thing I will maybe to contend with is I wasn't hired by the Rotary group. I'm doing this pro bono as kind of a donation to the project. And one of the fun things about retirement that you get to pick and choose causes. So as we look at this project, we have this today to be able to include this in the park system, to be able to have an upgraded, updated downtown urban space is a pretty exciting thing to do. And the design just didn't fall out of the sky. We did have quite a bit of work that was done by the committee in interaction. We initially started out and talked a lot, did a visual preference kind of discussion, a whole host of images, downtown pocket parks in various parts of the country, looked at everything from if we have water, how do we integrate water into the park, how do we do paving systems, how does lighting work. We have two really cool brick walls on either side of this. Are there treatments we can consider, in the near term and the long term for those? And really had some pretty good discussions about what they liked and didn't like and wanted to see. And so we began to kind of get an idea from a program standpoint going forward what we would include in the project. We did do some analysis, looked at the opportunities and constraints, views in and out of the project, really focused on entrances and edges, and then drew some conclusions. And probably one of the big conclusions that we drew is we really wanted to push the park out to the street. And so instead of coming up and going into the park, we wanted you to come up and go through the park. And those are two very different things as you kind of cycle up and down Sherman. And so from that point, we began to develop these concepts where we would, I guess the concept, if I can get the cursor to work here and you can see it, the notion of maybe we would push out into the street and eliminate 2 or 3 parking spaces and expand this plaza out to the very edge of traffic, creating a larger pedestrian and seating zone, but also creating the opportunity to do some design things. And so presented a series of alternatives for them to look at based on different kinds of design expression, some really rigid linear stuff and some more free-form spaces, again, with this notion that we're going to try to reinforce and continue to use some of the use areas and places where things happen in the park, but also then to create some other special areas ongoing that maybe could have other events or make it a little more multi-use in the future. And so we landed kind of on this concept that you see in the lower right after going through this discussion of design. And as I said, when we got to this concept in the lower right, we then took it to Chris and to Hillary and to Troy and began to talk to staff about what we wanted to do. That was tweaked, and we ended up finally with this concept right here, which is the one that the club endorsed and wanted to take forward. And just to orient you, to the left is Sherman, to the right is the alley. And so we were looking at maybe saving the street trees, although I think we were told that if we wanted to, all the trees could come out. As I looked at that, I kind of said, no, I think from a value standpoint, we've got some investment, we've got some time, we've got some long-term commitment to these trees. Let's see if we can save some of the biggest ones. Maybe perhaps the ones in the back part of it that haven't done as well or might be struggling a bit. Maybe we can look at that. But the broader concept and design expression is one of these really cool concentric arcs that sort of symbolically represent that rotary wheel in action and the club and its impact on Coeur d'Alene, but also the larger organization of Rotary nationally and internationally, the things it does and the benefits that it provides. And so we have looked at kind of as you come up this expanded plaza and sidewalk area pushing out into the street. There will be a lot of benches, a lot of places for people to sit, a lot of planted areas, but also these arced entrance walkways to bring you through the park. This thing that you see here, this center arc that comes through with these small circles, I'll talk about that in a minute, but that is really the historic timeline, and we're going to do something very special there. In the very center where these arcs intersect, we're going to have a 5-foot bronze rotary wheel that'll be embedded into the concrete flatwork. So the neat thing about this is we're going to change this from the crushed rock gravel surfacing to something a little more resistant to wear and tear. We're kind of maintain the performance multi-use venue that sits underneath the mural on the east side. But we're also then going to expand maybe that hardened plaza area to give maybe the opportunity for some larger events to happen. And then in the back corner, the southeast corner, we are proposing a low-volume water feature, something called a water wall. And I can back up and show you. It's not, volume-wise, not like maybe what, say, the K-27 Memorial looks like, but it's more something like this image in the lower right where we have low-volume water that washes over a wall, creates a little bit of sound and a little bit of splash, but is really easy to maintain, but has a big impact on a site. The second reason for that is we talked about the views back out to the alley, not in the foreground and the middle ground, not terribly shiny, as you might say, and so the wall will be 6 feet high. We'll block most of that out. Over above the top of the wall, you'll look out to the lake, although I'm told that at some point in the near future, there is a high-rise plan for that site, and so all of that may go away. But nonetheless, we'll plant the back areas to create more shade, mixed shade and sun, and then one of the things we are continuing to talk about is the level of Rotary messaging. I think there's a lot of people that say maybe we should really emphasize that this is a Rotary project. Others are saying, no, we want to keep this low key. And this is about kind of a commitment to community. And so we're going to land that very soon as we get more into design detail. With respect to what the park looks like, just show you some images. Here's the water wall, looking at it to the southeast corner. Very simple cast in place concrete structure. The face of the wall will be, the forming will include different forms and shapes of lumber to create a rough face, so when the water washes down it splashes and rolls over and creates kind of that sight and sound that we want. The wing walls on either side will be some opportunity perhaps for some imagery, verbiage from Rotary, or graphics, but you can kind of see what we're trying to create there in terms of a space for people to come sit. Bob talked about ice cream or food or whatever, a festival setting. The neat thing we're going to do, that the club is going to do, the History Committee is, as Bob said, is researching all the projects that Rotary has done over the last 100 years, and they're going to have a bronze medallion cast for each project. And so the neat thing about that is that we'll take those medallions and we'll put them on the center line of these arcs that come through the center of the walkways. And so we will core out the concrete. We will place each one of those medallions in the concrete. So it'll be a timeline going all the way back to 1922 of all the projects that the club has done, which is a pretty cool little thing that has come forward. This exhibit I put together for the club just to show them if they wanted to have their Rotary meetings in this plaza space or in this park space, they could bring tables in, set up, have a head table, and have up to 100 to 150 people in the space, and have lunch or have dinner or have an event. And so it sort of changes kind of the outlook and the possibilities. We'll have pedestrian lighting, overhead lighting, kind of like we have on the street. We're also planning to have that low voltage type of lighting to wash the wall, the trees, and some other things, much in the similar fashion that we have at the K-27, where we can adjust colors, timing, and moods for different times of the year. So with that, these are just a series of images of, as to what the park is going to look like. We're going to have different pavement colors, some charcoals and some roses and some regular concrete. But if you were across the street, say at that Wiggett building looking down from the 3rd floor, this is what you might see looking out the window and into the park. You can kind of see this broader concept of how we wanted to push the plaza out into the street. So this is, one of the requests we're making of the city is to be able to do that. We will be eliminating some parking, 2 to 3 spaces to do that, but you can kind of see the benefit of that we end up with a really terrific urban space. The benches will be made of precast concrete, partly for seating, but also partly for that good old North Idaho pastime of off-roading. We're going to try to have some access control to keep people from driving into the park. And so they'll be scattered all through the park, but can be moved and adjusted, picked up and moved as we need to. And so these are just a series of images looking at it from across the street as to what the park will look like. As you walk up from 3rd Street, and again, it's to and through, not to and in, the broader concept, from the other direction, and then sort of walking through. You can kind of see here the medallions as they'll be placed in the pavement, what that will look like. And just to kind of give you an understanding of the overall design expression and the fun. So one last thing to do, and we'll see how your computer is if we don't blow this up. There is an animation that will kind of walk you through this or fly you through this just to get kind of a ground level feeling of what the space will do. And credit goes to Jenny Gibson at Architects West for putting this together. Everything we've done graphics-wise and all of this has been kind of donated to the project to date. But you can get an idea of how that space will change. We hope for the better. And the only thing I will say is probably the purple leaf trees are going to be a little larger because they're existing trees and 30 years on having been planted. So we aren't going to paint the buildings across the street white, but we weren't quite good enough to get those dropped in. But you kind of get an idea of the overall design intent of the project. So with that, if you have questions, or maybe I should leave that in to be able to bring stuff back up if you want. So,
But, Mike?
John, do you have an estimated cost for what you think it would take to put together the pieces that you're talking about here for the project?
well, we have 7,500 square feet inside the lot. We have a budget of almost 300,000 to do it. The opinion of cost I've given John is right in that 280 to 300,000. But that's for full price. And so there are some things that we think we're going to be able to get at discount. There's some things we think we're going to be able to get donated. The approach to this project is going to be very similar to what we did with the K-27, where we have a budget and we work it, and we build to that. And I think John has indicated to me he doesn't think we have a lot of challenges. I think we're both worried about this economy of supply chain type stuff and near-term inflationary things. We intend, I think, if approved, to do some of the demo this fall, maybe get the new curb put in and put back, to maybe begin to build or get the water wall done this fall, and then hit it pretty hard in the spring and finish it all up. Just that will allow us to get out ahead of the supply chain stuff and things like that. So I rely on John on the cost stuff, and he's expressed no worries, at least at this point.
I didn't see any type of a restroom facility, a porta potty or a shelter for one or anything like that. Was that discussed?
It was at one point. I can let Bob talk about that if you like. I think the Downtown Association came to us with a discussion about having perhaps a porta potty put in. And so I'll let Bob kind of explain the club's position.
Yeah, the club, it was brought up, and we was soundly rejected. We didn't want this to be turned into a project of community restrooms. We wanted it to be a project of there wasn't one there before. There's plenty of restrooms in the area. And so we wanted to put our money to this. So it was soundly rejected by everybody. So it was discussed.
Okay. Christie?
Thank you. I would follow up. Well, I guess what I would suggest is, it's beautiful. First of all, it's gorgeous. And the city has a long-standing partnership with Rotary. Rotary's done so much. We know this. I'm a fellow Rotarian. Well, I used to be. But I think there has to be a little bit of room for the city to be at the table for discussion. And maybe what the club doesn't always see as needs, the city might see as needs. So I'd really like to see some more of that discussion going on. And Troy, maybe you can answer as to what kind of discussions you've had with Rotary.
Yeah, because my understanding was John had met with all the players. And
Oh,
so,
Correct. I mean, good evening, Commissioners. Troy Tymason, City of Coeur d'Alene. We have met with the design group, especially as we looked at the integration of the park out into Sherman and take up some of those parking places. So there's a lot of engineering that's been going on so that snow can be plowed and the street can be swept. Again, it is a donation, and so the donor gets to have their ideas brought forward. And staff, Mr. Greenwood, and the Downtown Association significantly brought up the idea of a restroom, and you heard what the donor's response was. I brought this forward to our parking commission, and since we don't have true spots that have tick marks for parking downtown, I guess it depends on what size vehicle you would park in front of it. But as we think back over almost 22 months now of COVID, having an area that's open to the public for consumption of anything is a really big deal. I would suggest to you that East Sherman has a temporary parklet in front of a restaurant, and it's amazing the amount of time that people spend out in the public space down there in front of Moontime. So that's one that we totally agree is a novel concept. But as we look back over the last year and a half to 22 months, a public space in a downtown area for eating, drinking, and being at is very positive. So that would be a long-winded answer to a response that said, we asked, and the donor said, we're not interested in a restroom facility on this property.
okay, you kind of gave two answers there, so that's understandable. But you kind of went into the parking thing too, and that was going to be a question. I think, in all honesty, I want to be very upfront and honest with our good friends here who are coming forward and trying to do such a nice project for the city. I do think there'll be some concern about those parking spaces, and I would anticipate that. And then I also think that you will probably hear a little discussion, even if it has to be on the city's end, that we provide some sort of a laboratory facility. So those are just my thoughts. I think it's a beautiful concept. Kudos to John Mueller. Again, he does beautiful work, and he's always so kind and with his donations to the clubs and the city. Those are just my two thoughts.
Jim?
I did have a question. John, maybe you could speak to this. The water wall. First off, this is beautiful, I agree. It's all kind of brand new. I need some time to digest it a little more, personally. The wall, you mentioned it was 6 feet tall. So it would really cut down on some view as it stands now towards the lake. How certain is this high-rise going to be there?
Fairly certain, as I understand it, that there is a project plan for the U.S. Bank properties, and it's multi-story. And so and it's funny because when we talked about this project, especially the back part of it, people wanted to paint the back side of the buildings across the alley. They wanted to do screens. They wanted to plant nothing but trees. There was some discussion about the amount of shade or the amount of sun. And it finally came back, well, you do know it's not well known yet, but there is a project coming. Okay. And so the original intent of the water wall, I think I had set a height of 5'6". because I actually stood back and had a measure, and that it stood to the front, had a stick or had a human being stand to the back, and that was about the height that would screen all the foreground and middle ground stuff. So you wouldn't get the parking, you wouldn't get all the trash, you wouldn't get all the stuff, but you'd get the lake and the trees
Right.
above that.
Okay.
And so when we heard about maybe the high-rise club came back and said, well, can we raise it up maybe another 6 inches, just go a full 6 feet and get the full benefit, maybe a little more screening without killing the cost. That's the first thing. So, and the water wall is designed to be low volume. I think at K27 we're pushing 1,250 gallons a minute. This will be somewhere in the range of about 100 gallons a minute. Seems like a lot, but you stretch that over 55 feet, and really it's like 1/8 of an inch of water that comes over and splashes and does its thing. And so it's you can also get variable speed pump controls for single phase power, which really gets some efficiency with respect to power use and maintenance and that kind of stuff on pumps. So.
I just would like to add one more thing. Just an opinion.
Sure.
Kind of on the same page as Christie. I've been down to many concerts down there and have had a need to consider a restroom facility that is you can only go into nothing public. You have to go into somebody's business. And so as you have more events down there, I just would wish there might be an opportunity to discuss that a little further. The city has put in porta potties very successfully that are attractive, don't look like a typical outhouse. So I don't know if the club would be willing to revisit that, but I certainly would be interested in that.
Well, I think that's a discussion then we're going to have. I don't know how to couch that in a constructive way, given all the things we talk about with the vandalism that's going on in our restrooms and stuff like that. And so you're danged if you do and danged if you don't. And so I know it's important to have. If you're going to do that, I'd rather see you spend another $300,000 and go down deep and do something that's hidden in a way. Club can't afford that. And so to me, there's maybe a bigger project here, that if you really want to do that. To me, it's kind of unseemly to spend the kind of money that you're going to spend and to have one of those sitting in the back with the stack and the odors and all the things that go with that. I'd rather see you go in a different direction if you're going to do that. Problem is, whatever you do is going to be exposed to vandalism, and granted, porta potties have less of an issue for cost for replacement and cleanup, but still the exposure's there.
Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate all that input. I think that it would be good for us to hear from Bill Greenwood. We haven't had the same kind of, experience with the porta potties that you're talking about. Bill does some really nice projects. And so, Bill, maybe you could talk to that concern.
Well, I understand the club's concern about the porta potty. I believe it's important. I think that, John, you and I spoke a little bit about how we could mitigate some of the concerns. There's a way to place that in there. There's a screening effect. You talk about vandalism. You're right. We've had some vandalism to porta potties. We've also had vandalism at K27. And so the park in itself is a target. Not just particular elements, but sure. Our parks have been hit pretty hard this year. The restrooms, not so much porta potties. I don't know why that would be, but that's the reality of what we're seeing this year. And I think it's the businesses, it's an intrusion upon their business for us to create this beautiful space. You've done a great job on the design. I think it's very cool, but then inviting more people there and then not having a place for them. I mean, we're doing a little park down the street, and we're building a porta potty structure off of the parking lot and set up in a way that, it'll be tasteful and it'll be in a corner somewhere, but hopefully it won't get vandalized.
Sure.
But again, we don't want to, impose our patrons to go use the facilities next door, sure. Who aren't going over there to buy a burger at Moontime or go across the street and get breakfast at Jimmy's. So I think it's critical. I know we had a discussion. I'll say this, I was a wee bit disappointed that it played out the way it did because I thought it was extremely important. The club didn't think so as much. So that's my experience with public spaces. And you've had many more years in public spaces than I do. And I think you understand the possible need for that as well.
Well, I think the club has been clear, about what they want. If there's more discussion to be had, then I think that is something that may have to continue.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I guess, John, is that primarily centered on the cost of that type of a facility, or is it the aesthetic, or is it both? The objection, that is.
Well, for me, it's the aesthetic, and for me, mostly it's the smell and the venting, and that is always, whether you're in a campground or you're in a park or, you have, and so if you're having a nice event there and the wind changes, it almost always at some point ends up swirling in the space.
Yeah.
And so that would be my concern, and that's why I said what I said. And I've been careful to respect the wishes of the club and let them take the lead on this discussion. But that's why I said what I said. It would seem to me that if you're going to do restrooms on a site like this, you would do something more permanent and hidden, rather than for the potential to have odors and smells that would detract from the experience that the users would have in the space. And that's would be my concern,
Christie?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Judge Burton, could I talk to you again? Sure. Thank you. Well, I would just like to suggest, you've been around a long time like me, we're getting old, but you look fabulous. I would just like to suggest that many of us have been involved in public-private partnerships. And I see this as an incredible public-private partnership. Don't want to give the impression at all that the city or this commission wouldn't be interested in this project. I want to see it happen. But I also like there to be some consideration that both entities have to be at the same table, have to have some kind of discussion about what works for you, what works for us, since the long term is that it's a city-owned property. So just my feeling is I'd like to go back and have some more discussions with that on what works for the city, what works for the club, where can we meet in the middle? And I'm not talking about drastic changes, small little discussions.
Who are you talking about? Because I think John has met with everybody that he could, so I don't know.
He did meet with us, and at the end of the day, quite frankly, we were told no. And so we had this discussion, and I just, stated my position here with Mr. Mueller. And so it's an interesting observation. The commission is used to park spaces, obviously, and so they've got the same concern that I have. And as we're talking about it, I've spoken with Mr. Mueller about the water wall and the maintenance of that. I've got some, I think it's beautiful, but when the ribbon's cut and the accolades are given, I'm going to be left holding the bag to take care of this thing and make certain it looks really good from here for 99 years. And I won't be here then, but someone else will be. And so, I voiced those concerns. John has talked to me about how he's trying to design this so it's really easy to maintain. It's a single phase power, which is good. And I trust John, but I still have some reservations about it. And I don't know, how many times people are going to be putting soap in it and we're going to be cleaning it and draining it. Happens quite a bit right across the street from here, over there to their water features fairly regularly. And so, fortunately, that has not happened in our K-27 but once. So that's not a bad number there. So that's, we have had the discussion, but my commissioners here, I've got the same concerns that I've voiced.
Well, just to mention, Bob, as a commission, this is really the first time we've seen it, obviously seen the concept and have really had an opportunity to understand it and ask questions. So we're kind of
Yeah, I
This
understand.
is all new to us, other than, what previous discussions that Bill has had.
And truthfully, I've already been changed a little bit. I was a little concerned about losing the parking spots, but the design, the way it looks, I'm kind of thinking that might be pretty cool. So I just think maybe a little more discussion maybe we can come to more agreement.
I think that's
Any other-
where I am too. I would just love to see more discussion. And again, please don't think that we don't want it to happen. We do. It's a wonderful project.
I hope it happens, because we made kind of an investment here, and obviously the owners that sold this to us, that was part of the selling point, was that Rotary was involved and we were gonna do this. That's why they decided to sell. So I hope we get an agreement.
I think we will. I don't think you should walk away feeling that we don't want an agreement. I think we all want an agreement. I think that's a solid deal, absolutely. But some of these design elements within it, that's what we have to have some more discussion about. Because I'm looking forward to it, I
Just don't
really am.
want to cheapen the thing, and like you said, with the smell and whatnot, and we don't want it just to be focused as a restroom. We want it to be a park, for our Rotary Club. That was what the whole
Understood.
purpose of it was.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess, it sounds like this isn't quite ripe yet, even though, from your perspective, I'm sure it is. It's fairly new to all of us.
Yeah, I understand.
If we had another month to take a look at this and maybe complete those discussions that need to be done, would that put a big kink in your timeline as far as moving forward with it?
Pretty much,
Pretty much, yes.
yeah.
I kind of know the commissioner's concerns, and we have a regularly scheduled workshop the first Tuesday of the month,
Yeah.
Okay?
which I guess is right after,
September 7th.
Yeah.
it's not a full month, but I mean, there's an opportunity to vet those issues that you have concerns about, and we got 2 weeks to
Yeah.
belay those concerns that you might have.
Yeah, I think
From
so.
my
Do you have
perspective,
thoughts,
I would like this to be packaged in a way that when it goes to council, it's well-received. I'd rather have some discussion here before we get that far down, and then have council have some objections about this.
definitely me too.
Well, I think if those discussions happen at the Park and Rec Commission level, and everything is considered and worked out, and I think the things at the city council level will just go much smoother. But those items had been discussed, agreed upon.
And I can just tell you, I've heard from one councilman that just knows a little bit about the design, the concern over the parking. So that might be some of the questions that come up that you'll be dealing with.
Well, any other questions or comments for Bob or John?
I guess, first, very nice design. It really does look nice.
Absolutely.
It's an exciting
We're
project.
going to make it happen.
All right. So who do you want us to meet with? I guess that's my question to you, that we
Bill.
haven't already.
I think you need to have ongoing discussions, real good sit-downs with Bill.
Bill?
Come forward to the.
And Troy,
Troy.
and, yeah, we can work through that.
But, I don't think we're very far off, in my personal opinion, from
We're not.
a full endorsement
No,
on this
absolutely.
project.
Not at all.
So, well, what's the commission's pleasure then on this? Do you want to go ahead and not make a recommendation tonight, and leave open the opportunity to review these issues you want to discuss, and then plan to make a recommendation or a endorsement at our next regular workshop?
Mr. Chair, I think that's a good plan.
Your next regular workshop or your next regular meeting?
Can it be done in a workshop? I mean, the time element for Rotary is becoming critical with
We'll look into that.
materials and labor, and the fact that we're getting late in the building
Okay.
season, and it's going to become a big issue schedule-wise.
Okay.
With our, legally, what can we do in a workshop if it's properly advertised?
Push my button.
I'll talk to Renata and Randy about that. I think we can.
Okay.
Well, I could say where I'm at. If that's enough time, that's fine, but this is brand new to me, and I'm sorry, it's got, it's on the fast track, but I really don't want to be held hostage to not having a little more time to
I
solve
understand.
these things. So,
I understand.
yeah, just because it's the last second is not a reason to not really fully vet this.
Okay. We'll have further discussion about the timeline then as well.
Okay. Well, then, the group here then is not going to elect to take any action, no motions.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I don't think.
Well, Bob and John, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. We appreciate it. I guess I guess our communication with you will be done through Bill Greenwood. So I guess we'll just wait to hear back, Bill.
Okay.
Any other business comments or announcements from commissioners tonight then, before we wrap up? Okay. I'll just make the couple announcements before adjournment then, announcing that our next regular workshop meeting will be held Tuesday, September 7th, 11:30 a.m. in Conference Room 6 in City Hall. And then our next regular monthly meeting will be held September 20th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. right here in the meeting room, community room here in the library. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Lean and seconded by Commissioner McDowell to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.